Hi, my name is Ian Mean. I'm editor of the Western Daily Press, and tonight I'm interviewing Caroline Norbury, and Caroline is the founding chief executive of Creative England. Caroline, tell us about Creative England. Not really on my radar. Tell us all about it.
Okay, we have a very simple proposition. Our proposition is that talent is everywhere, and what it needs is access to three things. It needs access to money, it needs access to market, and it needs access to networks. And by bringing those three things together, you enable talent to fly. And so what we do is we invest in creative people, and we invest in creative businesses, and we help to grow them and move and help them make the next sort of jump, really, in terms of either their career or in terms of how their business is going to grow.
It's mainly in the TV and digital area, is that right?
That's right. So we work across, I suppose, what you would have called the media sector. So film, TV, video games, and now we do a lot of work in the creative and digital sector as well, because many of those businesses have transitioned into digital businesses.
Now, you're big in Bristol. Bristol is a big creative area, isn't it? Tell us about Bristol and why that's so.
So it's really interesting when you look at the creative clusters that exist around the country. So the notable ones, obviously London. London is a massive international powerhouse. Manchester, Leeds, Sheffield, Birmingham, and Bristol. And Bristol is absolutely, despite its size, because it's much smaller than those other cities, it really, really punches above its weight. And I think that there are lots of reasons for that, but very simplistically, you can distill those to having great universities, and universities that have been here and been established and been very strong in...
Like UWE.
Like UWE, that have been established for some time, but also have a very good track record in terms of having good art schools. Right. I think that's very important. You cannot possibly underestimate the importance of the BBC here. So having had the BBC here, not just as a local news centre, but as a commissioner, as an investor in local businesses, and until really quite recently, a very strong ITV. So when we had the regional TV franchises, HTV, as it was then, did an awful lot to invest in TV businesses. And I think that what you have in the city is a very strong ecosystem, because that investment in content spills over into all sorts of things. So yes, we've got a very strong TV sector here, but that has real ramifications then for having a very rich content set of businesses, and then you can see that we've also got a very strong set of digital businesses. So I think that continual investment in creating original content and investing in ideas is at the heart of what makes a city a creative city.
Now we're a city, as you say, quite small, just under 550,000. Yeah. When you see that we produce creative companies like Aardman, why are they so attracted to this area? Is it the fact that, as you say, you've got a cluster of creative talent?
I think that's largely it. I mean, one of the real issues that you have if you work in the creative industries, and I'm sure this is true actually of lots of other businesses, is that you want you want to have a life where you're not dependent on one company, and so you need to have a critical mass of companies so that you can have a job somewhere, but you're not reliant just on that one company. So you can transfer to to other businesses and keep working in that field. Obviously, we have a wonderful quality of life in the southwest. I think it's second to none, and I've lived all over the country in lots of different countries. Here? Yeah, I live here, and so I think that's really, really important. I think Aardman are an interesting case in point, because they moved to Bristol just over 25 years ago, and they moved here specifically to make a small segment of a programme that was broadcast by BBC Children's, as it was then, which was based in Bristol. It's now based up in Salford. And they, their business grew out of making 1-minute clips for a children's programme. And I think it's really important to look back at that and understand how long it takes to establish a business. And what's really interesting about their business is that it's a complete 360 business. You know, they have got a merchandising arm, they work in film, they work in games, they have an events business, they do exhibitions. They've morphed, if you like, into a really content-rich company, and that's why they're a surviving creative business, because it is quite difficult to sustain growth in this sector. I think with a population the size that we have, I think it's really interesting when you look at the US, for example, and the size of the market there. You know, you don't actually have to be that brilliant, really, because you've got a massive market. Whereas to work in the UK market, you really do need to be brilliant.
And you invest in a lot of these companies, don't you? You
Yes.
invest quite a lot of money.
In terms of the amounts that we invest, actually we invest quite small amounts of money. I suppose as a whole, it might sound significant, and it is significant. You know, it's a lot more than was there 3 years ago before we were established. And I think what's interesting is, in terms of what we've done, is that we're perhaps one of the first organisations in that space. You know, we're a not-for-profit company, but we're very, very commercial. So we want to make profit. We want to make surplus, because what happens is that goes back into the companies that we support. So, I mean, the most we would put into a business is probably up to about £150,000, which might sound like a lot, but actually it's not. You know, lots of businesses really struggle to get. They might get some of that very early, under £50,000 money, and if they're lucky to survive, they might be able to find money over £500,000, but that little bit in between is very, very difficult to get. And what we're trying to do is to help people over that threshold, really, with the investments that we make.
So you're a sort of dragon's den of creativity, a little bit like that? Or is that too simplistic?
We're not very dragony. I mean, yes, I suppose so. I mean, we're an investor. What we don't do is, and this is a perception that we have to deal with, is we don't give out free money.
No.
So even when we give out, so for some of our film work, for example, we will make a grant in order to help a writer develop a script, for example. But that's quite unusual. Most of the investments that we make, and most of the loans we give, we expect that money back and some. And it's really important that businesses understand that just because you've got creative in the title doesn't mean that you can't also be commercial.
Now, sort of throughout the country, forgive me if I've got the right figure, is it something like creativity worth about 71 billion?
So, yeah, just under 72 billion. So basically the UK generates £8 million an hour. The UK's creative industries generate £8 million an hour.
Every day of the week.
In GVA, yes. And employs, the creative economy employs just under 2.5 million people.
And how does the Bristol area compare with that in terms of numbers of people employed?
Off the top of my head, I don't know what the figures are in terms of Bristol's employment, but in terms of the businesses that we see, and in terms of, you know, when we've done statistics which do compare and contrast, you know, we've got an incredibly healthy creative industry sector. I think it's something like about 10% of the businesses in
Right.
Bristol and the southwest, I don't know necessarily just about Bristol, come from the you know, can be classified in the creative economy. And what's really interesting as well is, you know, we've talked about Aardman, we've talked about the BBC, you know, the Natural History Unit who are here and so on. But there are some really interesting newer businesses that have grown out of Bristol. So you've got Yogscast, which is how would you put it? It's a digital animation games business, which is based in Bristol. You've got Moobaloo, which is one of the fastest growing app companies. So within that digital space as well, Bristol is really punching above its weight.
Caroline, we're talking here before you're giving an address on behalf of UWE. Tell me something about the University of West of England and what they're good at in terms of creativity.
So I think what's interesting about UWE is that they do have an incredibly strong art school still. So they've got a very strong art school, but they've also got a very strong business school. And I think bringing those things together is, in terms of the area that I'm involved in, is incredibly important. You know, there's a general shyness sometimes, I think, or a reticence to talk about the importance of art when it comes to talking about business. But actually, if you don't nurture that creativity, if you don't nurture it right from the very, very early stages, actually you're not going to be able to grow great businesses. And I think having that, that connection of a great art school and a really good business school as well is one of the things that that marks UWE out.
And what's your advice to students today on those creative courses? Where are the opportunities? What should they do?
What should they do? Well, basically grab every opportunity you possibly can, really. I think that, when people are writing to me, when I'm looking through CVs and so on, what I look at actually is I look at what they've done in terms of stuff that they've produced, content they've made. I'm after that practical stuff that they've done. But equally, I'm interested in people who are well-rounded, intellectually curious. They've got something to say. I used to work as a commissioning editor for a short film program for a TV channel, and I'd meet hundreds of people a year who were all pitching ideas that they wanted me to commission, and they quite often their starting point would be I want to be a director, blah blah blah. I'm not interested in that. What I was interested in is whether they had something different and interesting to say, if they had a voice, if they had an opinion, and that's one of the things that I think people really need to focus on. What is it that drives them? What is it that they want to say? What's the contribution they want to make? Because everybody wants to sort of stand in the sun for a bit and be famous, have a label, etc. But actually what marks people out is what they actually have to say.
So in your view, what's a creative person? Because you work in areas not just film, digital, you work, say, in the health sector, don't you?
Yes, we do. I think what marks a creative person out is a collaborator. I think that there's a real myth, there's this sort of heroic idea of creative people as being these sort of tortured individuals, who have these moments of brilliance. And I'm sure they're out there, but most of the people who I meet who have a substantial career basically stand on the shoulders of others. And beneath them is a huge team of lots of people who bring lots of different disciplines together. I've worked in film and television for a long, long time, and that is made up of a lot of people all doing a very, very important job. And I think it's really important to have that quality of being a really good collaborator.
Now, we've got a general election coming in just under 6 months' time. What do you expect out of government in the future? How can they help the creative industries?
I think there's been a lot of talk about the need for more investment in skills, and there's been a lot of talk about how we need to invest in our STEM subjects, and we absolutely do. But I think it's also important. It's also important to invest in our arts as well. So we have Ian Livingston on our board. Ian Livingston is I suppose he's a game changer when it comes to the world of video games, and he talks about broadening STEM to STEAM. And I think that any incoming government has to acknowledge the importance of arts within the curriculum just as much as technology, because without it, again, you can't generate the content. So I think that's the first thing. The other thing is, I think that if you look at those countries where the creative industries have really grown, it has been the result of a really strong desire by the incumbent government to invest in research and development and to be very mission focused about their investment. So I remember meeting the Korean government about 12 years ago here in Bristol, and they came and they met lots of different companies, and they left with they went to other cities as well, but they they'd really decided that they were going to invest in the creative industries. And you look at Korea now, and you look at their game sector, you look at their animation sector, and it has really benefited from that mission-focused investment. So I think that's the other thing I would expect government to do.
Are we way up the league table in creativity? Where are we, roughly?
No, you know, I don't like to get into those sorts of comparisons. You know, there's lots of, I think we absolutely have some of the best minds and create some of the best product in the world. I think we absolutely are world leading, but I think there is a real danger sometimes of being very smug about that. China has changed its mission statement. I don't know if it's its mission statement, but they're sort of one of the things that, you know, their 5-year plan was all about made in China. And they changed that last year to designed in China. And I think that, you know, we're actually quite good at talking ourselves up. You know, we pretend to be sort of quite, you know, tight-lipped and, you know, prim and all of the rest of it. But actually, I think Britain's really quite good about shouting about how good it is, but it can't be complacent. And it really needs to, if it wants to keep its international position, it really needs to invest in its ideas, its schools and colleges, and all of that sort of soft stuff that goes around the edges. When I talk to people in other countries, one of the things that they're all really jealous about is the very the sort of the ecosystem that we have of public support for the arts, of private businesses, you know, the strength of the private sector, of years and years of public policy to support all of that texture. I don't think that it's an either or. I think you have to recognise that helping people to grow and helping businesses to grow, it's not a matter of the state getting out of the way or the state getting completely in it. It's absolutely a blend of those things.
One last question. I'm a student and, you know, I'm in the creativity area of UWE. What's your advice to me?
Get into the right networks. That's my advice. Really research the area that you want to work in. Make sure that you've got something that's distinctive, have something to say, and then find a way of getting into those networks and meeting people, and understand the importance of that. Because again, you know, the impact of digitisation does mean that you as an individual can reach a mass market, but it's very, you know, the internet is a very noisy place. And sometimes you've got to get out of your bedroom and actually, you know, meet real people.
Thank you.